Texas's strict voter identification law will stay intact after the Supreme Court denied an emergency request from critics who say the law is discriminatory. But the fight isn't really over. There is still a lawsuit pending in federal court. How could it impact November's election? Well, Ken Paxton is Texas's Attorney General. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Attorney General.
Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so there had been an emergency request to try to block this law, at least temporarily, while the underlying lawsuit plays out. The Supreme Court said no dice, at least for now, but the door isn't completely closed. Tell us about the law. What kind of voter ID is required, and why are critics so upset about it?
So in 2011, the Texas legislature passed a photo ID law that requires that basic forms of identification, photo IDs, be used when you vote. Driver's licenses, concealed handgun license, passports, things like the military IDs can all be used. It's been in place since 2011. We've used it in 3 statewide elections. We've also used it in local elections, and it's gone extremely well. So all the court said was that we could keep that in place while the litigation is going on.
Okay, now Texas officials, you all, have agreed with the U.S. Justice Department that there are about 600,000 eligible voters, people in the state who are eligible who may not have the exact right ID in accordance with this law. So how do you respond to that? And critics who say you shouldn't have 600,000 people, and they argue it disenfranchises mostly minorities, African Americans and Hispanics. If these people legally are allowed to vote, why should it be so tough for them?
Well, it's not tough. We have authorized the use of these voter IDs. So you can go into, if you don't have a driver's license or a military ID, you can get a free ID from the state of Texas, which allows you to go in and vote just like anybody that has a driver's license or other identified form of photo ID. So that argument doesn't really hold water because we've offered up free IDs to people that don't have those IDs. And all they have to do is go get one.
All right, and what about those who say that this is specifically targeted to make sure that certain people have a tougher time voting and that there are no cases of voter ID fraud and it's just a smokescreen?
No, we disagree with that. And actually, you can see the success of the program. We've been doing this since 2011, and we have had immense success. Millions of people have voted without problem using photo ID. And like I said, it's not that hard to get a free ID. If you don't have a driver's license, you don't have a military ID or a passport, it's not difficult to get an ID to go out and vote. So we've had a great experience with this legislation.
All right, let me ask you about the underlying lawsuit that is still in play in federal court. What's the timeline on that? Because the Supreme Court has made a note about the timeline and when they may get involved again if there isn't a decision. Obviously, with November looming, it can be very important.
So our timeline, is, the court mentioned, was sometime in July, but hopefully the Fifth Circuit, the entire panel will hear this coming up in the next couple of months, and once they've heard it, then whatever decision's rendered, then the losing party will have to decide whether they want to appeal that to the U.S. Supreme Court. So we're optimistic that this will get resolved soon, and we have elections going on right now that are being, you know, this legislation is impacting, so it's continuing to work even as we speak.
All right, well, we know that many other states are watching and potentially the Supreme Court getting involved down the line as well. Attorney General Ken Paxton, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.